From pirate plunder to gangster gold, here are 11 American treasures that were never found. So you still have a chance. Number 11. Blackbeard. The mysterious Edward Teach is better known by his other name, Blackbeard the Pirate. We know more about Blackbeard's terrible adventures than we do about the man behind the excessive facial hair. He actually made full use of his beard, reportedly burning fuses in it, so he smelled like something from hell itself. Like any pirate worth their sea salt, Blackbeard buried the treasure he plundered. He had a brief career in piracy between 1716 and 1718, even giving it up for a while after surrendering in exchange for a pardon. However, it was only a matter of time before his number came up. He ruthlessly abandoned his men so he could keep as much of the booty for himself. But where, ultimately, did he squirrel away his stash? Truth is, no one really knows. Blackbeard roamed both the American coast and the Caribbean, so a lot of places spring to mind. Former vessel the Queen Anne's Revenge is one idea, though the wreck is still being explored. In a twist, the excavation is the subject of legal proceedings, to be decided this year. Other possible locations include Plum Point in North Carolina, where he tried to settle down following his pardon. There's even a story that the devil took it. Number 10. Dutch Schultz. We usually associate treasure with pirates, but gangsters bury it also. Before he was killed by rivals in 1935, the infamous Dutch Schultz is thought to have hidden a $7 million stash in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. It isn't known whether the treasure is actually there, or if it's just a tall tale. Nearly a century after his violent demise, people are still out there looking for it. The millions are said to be in a steel box, which was buried on the banks of Esopus Creek, an epic tributary of the Hudson River. How do we know this? Because in the hamlet of Phoenicia, it's reported that men in fedora hats were seen carrying shovels. What were those guys doing? Attending a shovel convention? Unlikely. Another key factor is that Schultz, real name Arthur Flegenheimer, mentioned the treasure himself, though he should say that was on his deathbed, and he maybe wasn't making a whole amount of sense at the time. It was the inevitable violent end to a career in bootlegging and illegal gambling that led to various turf wars. Schultz sleeps with the fishes, but his treasure lying in the mud? Time will tell. And now number 9, but first, be sure to subscribe and let us know which treasure you would want to look for in the comments below. Number 9, Jesse James. Now, this is an interesting one. The Wild West outlaw Jesse James buried gold bullion to collect later on, but he hid the bounty in various locations. While some of the bullion has actually been found, some of it hasn't, so it's both found and not found. That said, the story behind the gold is fascinating. It came from a Mexican government transport that was robbed by the James Gang in 1876. Said to be worth approximately $2 million, the bullion was then buried in the Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma. A network of different sites, combined with maps and things like clues carved into rocks, made the treasure super difficult to find. There's been talk for years over where the gold lies. Jesse himself died in 1882, but then his brother Frank suddenly moved to Oklahoma from Missouri in 1907. He was supposedly farming peaches, but clearly had something else on his mind, asking around about certain places. Eventually he went back home. Years later, lawman Joe Hunter received a series of maps from an old associate of his father's. This led him finding some of the bullion at a location called Buzzard's Roost. He also dug up a bucket at Tarbone Mountain. Why a bucket? Well, that's what the James Gang used for their contract, carving T's and C's into the brass. Sounds like the ultimate bucket list, am I right? Number 8, John S. Mosby. John S. Mosby was a clever and dangerous man from Virginia. Serving for the Confederates during the Civil War, his famous nickname was the Gray Ghost. Well, it was because of his skills as a raider, where he and the men he commanded would swoop in and out at night. He was so good at that the group were called Mosby's Rangers. In 1863, the Rangers were in Union territory. To be more precise, the vicinity of the Fairfax County Courthouse. They were there to capture General Edwin H. Stoughton, which they did with their usual style. The operation ran quite smoothly, but there was one factor that didn't go to plan. Stoughton had a bag full of gold, silver, jewelry, and more, which was the property of the South. Mosby took the bag with him, but was forced to bury it when it looked like Union men were closing in to attack. There, the treasure lies to this day. It's believed to be worth around $6 million and is apparently buried between two pine trees near the courthouse. At least Mosby got something out of the raid, receiving a promotion to captain for his daring efforts. Number 7. Lufthansa heist. At the end of 1978, a major robbery took place that went down in history as the biggest heist of its kind on U.S. soil. The target was the Lufthansa cargo building, part of JFK Airport in New York. This attention-grabbing crime was carried out by the Lucchesi crime family. Waiting for them in the vault was around $5 million in cash, and jewelry to the value of $875,000. If you think that story might sound familiar, you'd be right. The Lufthansa heist was dramatized in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas, where Robert De Niro and Ray Liotta portrayed fictionalized versions of the main players. De Niro's James Conway, inspired by Jimmy the Gent Burke, chillingly plotted to whack the thieves so he could keep most of the money for himself, not dissimilar to the behavior of Blackbeard. After this, the loot was hidden and no one really knows what happened to it or where it is. The FBI spent decades tailing mob captain Vincent Asaro, thought to be heavily involved in the heist. And while they got him into court a few years back, they couldn't make anything stick. This unique case of American treasure may never be cracked. Number 6. The Fenn treasure. Millionaire author and art collector Forrest Fenn was diagnosed with cancer and vowed to hide a treasure chest containing some of his most valuable possessions sometime before he died. In 2010, he buried an antique lockbox full of goodies somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. The treasure is rumored to be worth around $3 million, but nobody knows what its contents truly consist of. It's said to contain an assortment of jewels, rare objects, and many gold items, including coins, nuggets, ornaments, and jewelry. Fenn hopes that its discovery will bring excitement and fun to people, and he hopes that search inspires people to enjoy and explore nature. He wrote a memoir called The Thrill of the Chase, and a 24-line poem meant to lead treasure seekers to its location. He says the poem holds 9 clues that will lead people to the treasure. As of this year, around 350,000 people have searched, but nobody's found it yet. In June of 2019, the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office in Montana reminded the public to use extreme caution when looking for the treasure. Several people have died on their quest. Several have been rescued from near death, and others have had run-ins with law enforcement. Sheriffs have asked Fenn to please call off the hunt, since they spend hundreds of volunteer hours rescuing people looking for the treasure. But while Fenn is sorry for those people, he says practically all of the correspondence he gets is from people wanting it to continue. Fenn briefly considered calling off the search after treasure hunter Paris Wallace's death in 2017, but he ultimately decided not to. Number 5. Old Ozark Cave. In Sulphur Springs, northwest Arkansas, there's a cave called the Old Spanish Treasure Cave. This rocky region is part of the Ozark Mountains that covers several states. The springs are located along the Missouri-Arkansas border, and according to legend, Spanish conquistadors buried a plundered fortune there. When the conquistadors, or conquerors, rocked up on American shores, they wasted no time taking stuff that didn't belong to them. The Aztecs, Mayans, and Native Americans were all subject to violence and theft. It didn't end well for the unwanted Spanish visitors, who were pursued and almost wiped out around 300 years ago. The treasure was buried in an old cave before the owners could get their hands on it. Those who survived left clues for those wanting to find the ill-gotten goodies later. Stuff like carvings and, of course, maps. This area is known for its stories about fabulous treasures, such as gold and silver mines. Another person thought to have buried treasure here was none other than Jesse James. Bits and pieces have been found, but so far nothing to suggest the presence of a mighty hoard. Number 4. Palomano Point. Palomano Point is found off the Big Island, aka Hawaii, and is reckoned to hold many secret treasures beneath the waves. For starters, there's plunder aplenty, courtesy of 16th century pirate Captain Thomas Cavendish. That name sounds pretty swanky for a pirate, and it was. Cavendish was a wealthy Englishman who did that kind of thing for a laugh, it sounds. Like many a pirate, he didn't play by the rules. He left to raid Spanish ships during England's war with the Armada. Cavendish set sail with 3 ships under his command and ruthlessly sank ones so he could concentrate his plundering efforts with the other 2. He was a big fan of Sir Francis Drake, and went on to beat Drake's circumnavigation of the globe record by a whole 9 months. He was called the Navigator because of his planet-circling prowess, and received knighthood from Elizabeth I. It's rumored a fortune of Cavendish's worth, in excess of $5 million, is under the water there. How did it get there? Well, Palomano Point is believed to have played host to shipwrecks, some of which predate the arrival of Captain Cook and the influence of Europeans on Hawaii. Experts dispute this, but nevertheless, treasure hunters are determined to bag that booty. Number 3. Shawnee silver mines. It's known that the Shawnee Indians used silver to make stuff like amulets, but where did they get this silver from hundreds of years ago? Was there a hoard of silver treasure somewhere, or were the Shawnee more industrious? Various stories claim they were mining their own metal and using furnaces to smelt it down. Proving this idea, and indeed finding evidence, is a tricky business for a couple of reasons. When prisoners were taken, such as the explorer Daniel Boone, they were reportedly set to work in these mines. Thought to be located in Ohio, the location was top secret, and captives had to wear a blindfold so no one quite knew where they were. On their release, all they could say was that they were near a village called Chillicothe. Trouble is, there's more than one Chillicothe. Other silver mines were talked about in Kentucky by English sailor John Swift. He got his hands on the precious silver, but then fell foul of the political situation back in England. Swift was imprisoned and sadly lost most of his sight behind bars. Journals were written and maps were drawn up. However, without his eyes to guide him, the facts couldn't be established. How frustrating. Number 2. Ted Binion Silver. When talented gaming exec Ted Binion died in 1998, at the relatively young age of 55, the story made headlines. Binion's father Benny was well known on the Las Vegas casino circuit, and Ted appeared to live the life of a movie character, taking drugs and getting in with gangsters and politicians. His demise was pretty dramatic, and what's more, it points to some buried treasure. Initially, it looked like Binion committed suicide, but then girlfriend Sandy Murphy and Rick Tabish were put on trial accused of murder. It was believed they wanted to get a hold of Binion's multi-million-dollar silver collection, which was located in an underground vault in the Nevada town of Pahrump. Murphy and Tabish were sent down, but the decision was later overturned. They were then convicted over trying to steal the fortune, so all Binion's treasure had been accounted for, right? Wrong! A significant amount is reportedly secreted on his property, still to be discovered. Number 1. Thomas Beale Ciphers. Thomas J. Beale has a lot to answer for. He was supposedly acting on behalf of adventurers from Virginia, who entrusted him their riches. Beale hid the treasures for them in Bedford County. Who were these adventurers? No one knows. Where in the county did he hide the loot? No one knows, but it is known what the treasure looks like. How come? It's all thanks to Beale's ciphers. He drew up 3 encrypted documents in the 1820s explaining everything, but so far, only one has been cracked. This relates to what the treasure looks like once you get your hands on it. It comprises nearly 3,000 pounds of gold, just over 5,000 pounds of silver, and assorted jewels. With a collected value of around $40 million, it's buried in a vault 6 feet underground. Beale himself vanished from the scene, leaving his ciphers to tantalize and baffle the world. He certainly set a challenge for the ages. To this day, the documents are still being pored over, with people none the wiser as to what he had in mind. On top of that, some believe the whole deal is a hoax. Still, it's gotta be worth a try. Thanks for watching. To learn about other treasures, be sure to check out our videos on extremely valuable treasures no one can find. Which treasure do you wish you could find? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching this episode. Did you like the video? Tell us what you think in the comments below, and be sure to like, follow, and subscribe.